Some people like to say that I got a baby face. But trust me, when George Nelson does a job, it's not kid stuff.
The story of George Babyface is more than just a tale of criminal activities. As Babyface climbed the ranks of the criminal underworld, he became increasingly reckless and unpredictable, leading to a dangerous game of cat and mouse with law enforcement. Even as the FBI closed in on him, he refused to go down without a fight, leaving behind a trail of bloodshed and destruction that would go down in history. This video covers the story of one of America's most infamous criminals and discovers what made Babyface a legend in his own time. We can't cover such a story of a man driven to the brink of desperation, fighting to survive in a ruthless world where violence and betrayal are the norms, without looking at the early years of his life. Lester was known for his quick temper and violent tendencies, earning him the nickname Babyface Nelson. How was he as a young man? Let's find out in greater detail. Early life. George Babyface Nelson, born Lester Joseph Gillis, was born on December 6, 1908 in the city of Chicago, Illinois. Lester Joseph Gillis grew up in a tough neighborhood in Chicago, where he was exposed to violence and crime from a young age. His father, Joseph Gillis, abandoned the family when he was a child, leaving his mother to support him and his siblings on her own. To make ends meet, Gillis started working odd jobs and hustling on the streets, including stealing cars and committing small-time robberies. Despite his troubled upbringing, Gillis was known to be a bright and ambitious young man. He was an excellent student and had dreams of becoming a lawyer. However, his involvement in criminal activities soon derailed those plans. Gillis became increasingly involved in organized crime as he got older, eventually becoming a member of the infamous Dillinger gang. He was sentenced to serve more than a year in the Joliet State Correctional Facility, along with a fellow criminal called John Dillinger. Dillinger managed to escape incarceration, as we'll later find out. He was also known to be a skilled marksman, and his expertise with a gun made him a valuable asset to the gang. Mafia Adventures and Crimes. Nelson's life took a dark turn when he started working with the notorious Strippers, a gang of thieves which introduced him to a world of crime. Then, he met Helen Warziniak, a lady that became his biggest criminal accomplice, and together they embarked on a path of lawlessness. The duo soon joined the infamous Tauhi gang and carried out a series of high-profile burglaries, earning the moniker the Tape Bandits in the media. The tension continued to mount as Nelson and his gang members planned and executed their next daring crime, always on the edge of doing something dangerous and getting caught. Our channel has become one of the most accurate when it comes to past events and their coverage, so why aren't you a subscriber yet? Hit subscribe and turn on post notifications to stay in the loop. The Escape. After being taken into custody with other members of the notorious Tape Bandits, he was sentenced to 1 year to life in prison. But in a daring escape from Joliet State Penitentiary, Nelson's criminal connections proved invaluable, and he made his way to Reno. There, he was aided by the infamous gangster and gambler William Graham before heading to the San Francisco Bay Area in search of work. It was there that Nelson met John Paul Chase and Fatso Negri, who would become his close friends. But his introduction to Alvis Karpis and Eddie Bentz would truly set Nelson on a path of crime. After a summer spent with Bentz, Nelson carried out his first heist in the Midwest. And though it wasn't extremely profitable, all those involved managed to get away unscathed. The question is, how long can Nelson and his associates continue to elude the law and reap the rewards of their criminal activities? Gang leadership. The daring heist of the First National Bank of Brainerd, Minnesota, marked the beginning of George Babyface Nelson's reign as a notorious criminal mastermind. As Nelson assembled his crew, including the likes of Homer Van Meter and Tommy Carroll, whispers of a high-powered northern gangster presence began to circulate. During the chaotic escape, Nelson's submachine guns sprayed bullets at any unlucky bystanders who got in their way. With his stolen loot secured, Nelson fled to Texas, where he acquired deadly firearms that would prove instrumental in his next heinous act: the killing of an FBI agent at the Little Bohemia Lodge. The gang erupted in gunfire as the law began to close in on them, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The suspenseful tale of George and his violent reign of terror is not for the faint of heart. John Dillinger's Escape. There are different hypotheses regarding the involvements of George Babyface Nelson in John Dillinger's jailbreak on March 3, 1934 at Crown Point, Indiana. Some suggest that members of the newly established gang, including Homer Van Meter, may have planned and funded the escape, while others believe that Nelson may have played a more significant role. It is speculated that Nelson may have provided some of the money for the bribe, possibly even orchestrating the jailbreak. On the night of Dillinger's escape, Nelson and his companion, John Paul Chase, were involved in a fatal altercation with Theodore Kidder, who had them cut off while driving. This occurred on the same night that Dillinger arrived in the Twin Cities. 2 days later, the gang, including Nelson, committed a heist at the Security National Bank in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It is unclear whether Hamilton was involved in this robbery. During the heist, Nelson discharged his submachine gun, seriously injuring Officer Hale Keith. Despite the notoriety of Dillinger, there was no clear leader among the 6 men, who came to be known as the Second Dillinger Gang. However, some speculate that Nelson may have played a more significant role in the gang's activities than others in the group. The risks and rewards became greater with each crime they committed, but so did the danger. The thrill of the chase was addictive, and Nelson's life became a dangerous game of cat and mouse with the law. Did his life of crime catch up with him? It sure did. One thing we know for sure is that his death came early. Until date, the cause of his death remains a mystery, which we will cover shortly. Little Bohemia Lodge. The search for George Babyface Nelson's gang, or Second Dillinger Gang, was deafening, and in the height of it all, the range planned a vacation. The trip to the Little Bohemia Lodge in Manitowish Lakes, Wisconsin, was planned for the 20th of April and included a total of 7 people. Nelson, his wife Helen, and 3 of their mutual friends. Dillinger's attorney, Louis Piquet, was the link that brought the gang into contact with the resort. While Dillinger, Nelson, and Hamilton were playing cards with the lodge proprietor, Emil Wanatka, he noted that the gang members had shoulder holsters and pistols on their person. Later on that day, Miss Wanatka informed a friend named Henry Voss that the Dillinger Gang was staying at the lodge. The following day, on April 22nd, the FBI was notified of the situation. On the same day, Wanatka offered a special dinner, and as customers were leaving the lodge, an order to stop was given. However, 3 customers, John Hoffman and Eugene Boisneau and John Morris, were unable to hear the order because their car radio was on, and the agents opened fire, wounding Hoffman and killing Boisneau. Death and burial. What caused Babyface Nelson's death is surreal. He had been wounded during the gunfight with the FBI officers in Barrington, and by the time he arrived at the safe house in Wilmette, the sounds he had sustained in Barrington were proven to be fatal. On November 27, 1934, he passed away at the age of 35, leaving behind his family. Before running away, his wife dumped his body at a cemetery in the area after wrapping it in a blanket and dumping it there. The FBI retrieved the body of Babyface Nelson, and following the completion of an autopsy, he was laid to rest in River Grove, Illinois. A few days later, Helen Gillis was located and taken into custody. She was later found guilty and given a sentence of 1 year in prison. George Babyface Nelson has been remembered in history as one of the most notorious criminals of the 1930s, and in the end, he paid for his crimes with his life. His violent and reckless behavior left a lasting impression on the public, and he has been remembered as an anti-hero of sorts. Despite his criminality, Nelson was remembered by those who knew him as a friendly, gentle, and likable man who had a great sense of humor. He was a man of many faces, and his life story reminds him never to judge a book by its cover. Nelson's life was tragically cut short, but his legacy lives on. His story, inspiring movies, books, and even songs have been told and retold. He will remain an iconic figure in history, and his life will continue to fascinate and spark conversations for years to come. Do you find the Mafia and the world of organized crime fascinating? If so, you shouldn't miss this riveting video on Anthony Provenzano, a major mobster and trusted member of the Genovese crime family. This video is essential for anybody curious about organized crime and the Mafia, from its possible role in Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance to the mystery surrounding a stolen diary that may hold the key to his deepest secrets. Don't put off reading this riveting story any longer.